Welcome back to another video from the Math Tutor For You YouTube channel. Glad to have you back with us today for another math tutorial. In today's video, we're going to be going over how to simplify the roots of negative numbers. So if you find this video helpful, don't forget to smash that like button. All right, let's get into today's video. Simplifying the roots of negative numbers. So when we have a negative number inside of square root, there's one thing that we have to remember. If we have the square root of negative 1, this is going to equal I. So that's the one thing we need to remember. So if we see a negative underneath the square root, we can actually pull out of the square root I. So let's go through an example to see just how we're going to go about this. What if we had plus or minus the square root of negative 2? First thing we notice, we see a negative under the square root, meaning we can pull out an I. So we're going to have plus or minus I, the square root of 2. Well, the next part is very easy. Now we just need to simplify the square root of 2. And we do this the way we normally simplify square roots. Well, can we take anything out of the square root? Well, the answer is no. So in this case, our simplified version of plus or minus the square root of negative 2 would just be plus or minus I square root of 2. So the only thing we were able to pull out was that negative in the form of I. Because again, remember, I equals the square root of negative 1. All right, let's go through our second example. Here it comes. What if we had plus or minus the square root of negative 12? And we're asked to express the radical using the imaginary unit I. Again, I stands for an imaginary unit. So we're going to go through our first step again. We have plus or minus I square root of 12. Again, we pulled out that negative 1 from the square root, and now we're left with the square root of 12. So can we simplify this? Well, we need to think about what we can multiply together to get 12. Well, we can multiply 4 and 3. And then can we break down 4 even smaller? Yes. We can break it apart into 2 and 2. So if we multiplied 2 times 2 times 3, we would get 12. Now we want to see if there are any pairs that we can pull out. Well, yes, we have a pair of 2's. So we're going to pull that out from our square root. So let's rewrite. We have plus or minus 2I square root of 3. So the only thing left in our square root is 3. And that would be our answer. All right, let's go through another problem. What if we had plus or minus the square root of negative 28? So again, we're going to pull out our imaginary unit of I first. So we have plus or minus I square root of 28. Again, I we can pull out because it stands for the square root of negative 1. Can we simplify 28 using what we know about simplifying regular square roots? Well, we got to think about what we can multiply together to get 28. Well, we have 7 times 4. So 7 times 4. Can we break up 4 to any simpler values? Yes, we have 2 and 2. So we did a simple factor tree to figure out what we can multiply together to get 28. So if we have 2 times 7, we'll get 28. Do we have any pairs we can pull out? Yes. We can pull out a pair of 2's. So we're going to be left with plus or minus 2I square root of 7 will be our simplified answer for the square root. Here comes another example. What if we had plus or minus the square root of negative 23? Why don't you pause this video, try this one out on your own, and come back and watch the solution. All right, here's our answer. We're going to, again, take out the I first because it's a negative number under the square root. Plus or minus I square root of 23. 23 is a prime number, so the only thing that we can multiply together to get 23 would be 1 and 23. So therefore, we're just going to leave it as it is. And our final simplified answer will be plus or minus I square root of 23. Hopefully this video was helpful for going over how to simplify the roots of negative numbers. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to leave a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next video.